Hello, welcome to our monthly mentor panel, Career Development Through Continuous Learning, presented by Women Who Code Digital and the Dallas-Fort Worth Network. Let me introduce you to our host and panel moderator, Stacy Devino.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to get to introduce some of our panelists. But first, I just want to say this is an absolutely amazing opportunity to really delve deep into how you use continuous learning to really bump up your career. And to use an old quote or one that you may have heard on Dragon's Den or otherwise, why would I invest in you if you don't invest in you? And this is investing in you. So with that, I'm going to start kind of at the top. And this happens to be in alphabetical first name order, just happens to be. And start with our first panelist, Alice Zhao. Alice Zhao is a data science instructor and author of the book SQL Pocket Guide, 4th edition. She teaches courses in Python, SQL, R, and Tableau for Maven Analytics, O'Reilly Media, and Northwestern University. She has over 15 years of experience in the data field, working for companies including Metis, Cars.com, Redfin, and Accenture. She has the most popular natural language processing and Python tutorial on YouTube with over 1.2 million views. In her spare time, she writes about pop culture and data analysis on her blog, A Dash of Data. She has a MS in machine learning and data science and a BS in electrical engineering, both from Northwestern University. Next is Lauren Darcey. Lauren Darcey is a software developer, leader, and entrepreneur, and author of best-selling Android books. She has more than 2 decades of mobile engineering leadership and entrepreneurial experience, and believes that when you invest in people and empower healthy teams, they will build great products. She currently leads the Android platform team at Reddit. Next is Nikia Simpson. Nikia Simpson lives in Benton, Arkansas, and works full-time at Quartet Health as a full-stack engineer and teaches data analysis courses on LinkedIn Learning. Her career aspiration is to continue to work at the intersection of health, well-being, and technology. She's pursuing her master's in computer science degree at Georgia Tech, specializing in interactive intelligence. She's obtained her bachelor's degree in management information systems with a minor in biology from University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and a master's in business administration from Webster University in St. Louis, Missouri. Life is hectic outside of work and school. She's married with 3 boys, 12, 9, and 2 9-year-old twins. She loves comedy, sci-fi movies, and documentaries, concerts, and most importantly, cooking some good meals. So first off, intimidation zone. Just that's some accomplished ladies right there. I mean, come on now. So what you can see as the pattern is each one of these women not only invest in themselves, but invest in other people in helping them learn and continue to grow in their career, not just in the classroom, but also outside of it, and finding new ways to engage and help people achieve their ultimate dreams. So just a little flattery, y'all. Just a little. So to start us off tonight, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and where you are currently in your career?
I'll kick us off. So for me right now, I would say I'm at a point in my career where I'm solely focusing on education. So earlier on in my career, I come from engineering and consulting. I switched into data science after my master's degree. And then I got into education and I love it. And so currently I teach at a variety of places. I teach in person at a university. I teach live classes once a month through O'Reilly. And then I also teach recorded classes for Udemy. So I find the data education space so interesting, and I'm really looking forward to chatting more about it today.
I don't mind going next. First off, I think Stacy was totally right that there's a lot of teaching and giving back to the community that's around in here, and I don't think that's an accident. I think a lot of us start as, maybe you come up through a traditional route. I have a degree in computer science. I've loved computers all my life. I end up being a software engineer and IC for 15 years. And on and off, starting my own companies, doing my own stuff, and learning a lot that way. But to get to the crux of this, I have grown mostly by learning something and helping others learn it. That helps me learn something deeply. And I've never found a better way to continuously learn than to force myself to go learn something, be uncomfortable, and then share those things with other people. And I also think I was driven into engineering management and leadership, which is where I'm at now, in part because I felt like there was nothing special or unattainable about that knowledge, but it wasn't so widely shared as I would have liked. And if you had people that were a lot like you, and people you trusted, they would include you in their learnings and their tips and tricks and how to debug and how to get through hard problems. And I noticed that there was a gap there. And so part of the reason I went back into engineering leadership after I had my daughter was I realized that was a gap. And at least I could be the kind of person that would help connect those dots for people that might be coming in and feel different, as opposed to somebody who shows up and they look like everyone else in the room and they're just kind of included and like coached by default. It takes a little bit more effort to make sure that works in a more inclusive environment. So that became my mission, and that's one of the reasons why I was excited to come tonight. That's my answer.
Hey, I'll echo a lot of what our other presenters have said. It's like being in the space. At first, I knew that I always wanted to work in something healthcare related in tech. And I went to college and undergrad, and I said I want to major in computer science, but somehow I got put into computer information systems, and I was like, well, and at the time I just didn't know why. I thought that maybe my advisor just thought that you should go this route instead, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just do that. I was 18. I didn't know any better. I was thinking they did what was best for me. So I just did what everybody else thought what was best for me. But at the end of my program, I was like, no, I think I really want to do computer science. So I went back post-bac and did a couple of classes in the computer science program before I just started to work. And then I started doing what everybody else wanted me to do. And to the point where I started a family and I just started working. I worked as an analyst for a long time. That's why I teach data analysis. I worked in that field for a very long time. Then after I had my twins, I was like, no, I think I want to, I still really like building things. I like to be an engineer. So I went out and I said, I'm going to learn. I tried to, I was building things at work, but when you're just kind of building in a silo, you only learn so much because you can only teach yourself so much. So I had to go out and find communities. So I went out and found the developer communities and made connections there and found all these cool opportunities to learn online learning through Udacity and got a whole bunch of different nano degrees through there and learned so much and just all kind of different communities. Even it that opens the door to get to where I'm at today, which was like, okay, this is getting personal for me now. I want to go get that master's degree in computer science. So that's why I decided to invest in myself and go back and get that, because it was personal at that point. And during that time, even though I had a data analyst jobs. I worked as a program manager doing the development work for a very long time. It was important to me to become an engineer. So at 40 years old, I finally got that engineer position after all of that time. So if I have any advice to give to people, it's to listen to yourself. I mean, you know what you want, and just continue to go for those goals, because there's going to be people that's going to be in your ear. You'll be better at this. You'll be better at that. But know what you want and go for it, and just be focused, and the world is yours.
I also will say, like, I think that the just to kind of bring a little bit of color to that, I think it's also changed. We've seen a dramatic change just within the last decade to, make that so much more attainable. And the goals are different. I did not have the greatest experience with certain people in my education journey. I have some not so great stories. This is not the place for them, but it's interesting how much more accessible everything is and how much more inviting everything is. And probably because maybe some of the people in this room, I don't know. Little bit of influence, who knows? But okay, so I'm gonna kind of skip number 2 to really focus in on what is kind of career focused continuous education. Like, what are the avenues for this? What is involved? And like, is it technical? I mean, we've had some technical, but is it technical? Is it soft skills? Is it organizing? Is it what is it to you? What does this actually mean or encompass?
I don't mind going first, but
Okay.
Nikia,
Oh no, I was just trying to think of when I was thinking about that question, I was thinking like finding the gaps in what you're currently what you see that you need help with. And it could be anything. It could be soft skills. It could be a tech stack that you're wanting to learn more about or get into a little bit further. So I think it's just finding those gaps in your knowledge or what you really want to attain, and then just focusing on that. And it could be through any avenue, whether it's online learning or networking and trying to find a mentor that helps to get you in that direction. But I think that's what really was career focus when you're trying to really focus on what those skills are that you need.
I have very complicated thoughts about this. So we talked about this question a little bit in advance, and some of the answers to how do you invest in yourself are like boot camps, dev groups, professional org, certifications, online learning, coaching, degrees, clubs. And I'm like, I did none of those things really. And I'm like, and I don't have mentors. I've never really had a proper mentor in my entire career. I think the thing that I came away with was I got really lucky in my choices early on, in that I got into consulting in a way that forced me to learn things really fast that weren't documented yet and figure things out that before there was a book written about them. So being in that space, there's a lot of like interesting innovation and problem solving you can do that has high value. And then your job of like bringing that to a wider audience is like super clear and fun. So I did that at the beginning of mobile with Brew, and then I did it with Android before Android came out. And like I've continued to try and stay far enough ahead of like stuff to have an interesting place. But when I was thinking about what my advice is here, over time, I've fallen into a trap that is, and I ask myself now, how much credential building do I need and why? And I do this because sometimes I want to learn something because I feel like I'm not qualified for the job unless I have it, unless I've like gone and mastered that thing. And other times I'm doing it to give myself confidence, even though other people would just go get the job and learn that on the job. I feel like I have to come in already having some competency in that area and such. So I think now what I try to do is I try to get real world experience in something that helps me have a grounded perspective in the reality of the thing that I'm trying to demonstrate as fast as possible. If that means I need to go out and like just install something myself and mess around with it, I will, and I'll use online resources. And I love reading hard docs, the straight up docs, or the readmes or something along those lines. But I am very cautious now that I don't rack up. Like I've thought so many times, do I go back and get a master's or a PhD? And it's been offered, and I'm like, am I doing that to prove to, like, is it going to help me? Or am I proving myself to people that I shouldn't have to do that for, to get the experiences I really want to get? So those are the types of things where over and over again, especially in career pivots, where I moved into management, I reinvented what my second career was then. I gave up a lot of reading the documentation and I invested in how am I going to be a good strategic leader? How am I going to be a good manager? How am I going to be a good coach to other engineers? And that's a completely separate job. So I love reading books. I wouldn't necessarily say that I've relied on any one of the things that a lot of people are using now, but when I've gone out to learn something new, I will get rabbit holed into wanting to know everything about ML just to be able to like consider doing some ML work. And that's really not like, I will over teach myself instead of just go and try and do it for reals. So I don't know if that resonates with anyone else here, but like too many boot camps and not enough just go try and build something yourself and ship it, like is a trap that I think women especially fall into, because we want to make sure we're coming in the door feeling on paper competent in ways that maybe we are overcorrecting for, or at least I do. That's my long rambly, like I said, complicated.
Or to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
Lauren, I love what you said about trying things on your own, because I find that's a great first step in learning. Like I just remember after I did my master's program, like I took a bunch of classes, but I was like, do I really know what I'm doing? And so what I ended up doing was, this was like 10 years ago when blogs were really popular. I feel like they're not as popular now, but 10 years ago, blogs were really popular. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start a blog. And I felt like I didn't really understand natural language processing that well yet. And that was one of my favorite classes. And so I was like, I'm just going to look at all the text messages between me and my fiance at the time, who's now my husband. And I'm just going to do some analysis and then put it on my blog. And then after that, I was like, okay, I feel like I know this better. And it was really scary at first, because I was like, what if I did the analysis wrong? Like people will point it out. No one pointed out. I did do things wrong, but no one noticed. But I just find that like just doing things is a great first step just to like learn things. So I would say like start by doing things. And then like nowadays there's just so many classes online that you can take to like learn a little bit at a time. And then I would say like after you do it and then you like, I want to learn this more formally, then you could take those classes online. And you want to learn more, then there's boot camps. If you want to learn more, there's a master's or a PhD. There's just so many ways to learn. And I think just trying a little bit, like starting small and seeing what really like you gravitate to, that helps.
So I think that this kind of brings in like another piece that isn't like kind of one of our kind of pre things, but really, how do you join and maintain? So like for me, I'm subscribed to every mailing list for all of these things. I don't read all the articles. Ain't nobody got time for that. Sorry, I memed myself. I'm sorry. Next thing I'm gonna say is I got bronchitis. Anyway. Anywho, sorry, it's not coming through. But truthfully, like one of the things that really kind of resonates with me with that little tidbit is I'll play technical talks and TED Talks in the background while I'm doing other work, or I may not read all the articles, but I'll read all the headlines. So that if there is something that really resonates or that I find particularly useful, I have like this little nugget somewhere in my brain that like pops up magically. Don't really know how it works, but it happens. And so I'm trying to think what brings you into like your specialized area of continuous learning. How do you continue to invest in that? How do you then bring that into digestible tidbits for other people? Because you have to now know it, learn it, and teach it, and then probably still do another job. So what does that mean?
I'll go first on this one. I read deeply, but not widely anymore. I've unsubscribed from a lot of things. There are a few sources that I read quite deeply on the like management side, like HBR, which and I find that they're on repeat sometimes, so I don't have to read them again. But there's always I come to them differently every time. I'm in a different place in my career and I read them and I get some different tidbit out of it. But the thing that's worked best for me in the last couple of years has been to surround myself with people who are solving similar but not the same problems, plus one level out from that are actually like next level problems or quite different problems that I might be able to tie a connection to or innovate from. And an example of that would be I surround myself with other like mobile professionals. I listen to what they're doing. I want to talk shop with them. I will read their white papers every time. I want to have a deeper conversation about that kind of stuff. And then I'm sharing the TLDRs of that with people around me who want that and are not going to have time to read those. That I like reading the deep geeky stuff. But when someone else is solving a problem and they mention it in their engineering blog, I am paying attention to that because we're usually trying to solve similar problems. And then we give back by publishing the stuff that we're doing, and that leads to a conversation.
I would say one thing that I do is I just really lower my expectations. I think for me, when I switched from data science to data science education, the first job I had within data science education, I had a 1-year-old. I was not sleeping very much. And at work, I was surrounded by other people who were just constantly learning more and more. And I felt really behind. And it took me a while to kind of work through that. I joined this Moms in Tech Facebook group that was very encouraging. And it was basically like, you don't have to know everything all the time. And it's really impossible to do so. Like, I'm in the field of data science, machine learning. It changes every 2 years. Like, it's impossible to keep up. And so the first thing I had to learn how to do was basically say, I can't keep up. And also recognize that not everyone else can keep up either. Like, all these people who are talking a big game, they don't know everything. They might know a lot about certain topics if they dive deep into it. But I would say, like, knowing that, like, leveling my expectation. And the next thing I did was just find things that I was interested in and then learn just about that for maybe a month or two, and then move on to the next thing. Like, for example, so like I'm in NLP. And so once ChatGPT came out and then it was all about large language models, I was like, I got to get on this. Like, I'm so curious about this, but I know I'm not going to be an expert at it, but I'll listen to a few talks on it and then I'll read a few books on it. And then that will check that box and then I can move to the next thing. So that's been my experience, because this is just growing so quickly right now. It's impossible to learn everything.
Oh, Alice, earlier last year, I ran across your video while I was doing some work on search engine natural language processing stuff. So it was this weird kind of run across, and ended up going for a vectorized database approach. But it's so interesting when you kind of delve deep, but also learn enough to speak competently.
Yep, exactly.
Nikia, do you have anything?
I was trying to think of, is it something that I want to learn? Well, I'll say this. I think the best way to kind of reinforce your own learning is to teach it to somebody else. I think that was what I learned when I started doing, I did some intro to SQL classes for LinkedIn, kind of similar to this. I did some classes during the pandemic when I started, and I did it because I was like, I have all these years of, I don't do as much, so I don't want to lose those skills. So I'm going to teach it to somebody else. And when you start to teach to somebody else, you start to realize not just so much how much you don't know, but you're forced to structure it in a different way, because a lot of the things when you do it day to day, you're just you do it out of habit and you're not really thinking as much. But when you have to teach it to somebody else, you're kind of like, oh, wait a minute, let me take some steps back and really digest why I do it that way. And it makes you really better at what you do too. So I think that's a really good way to learn for yourself and to help other people. And then when you become more like in a senior level role, you have to be able to teach other people. So it's kind of teaching you how to have that skill.
Before we move on, I'm curious. I've been thinking about the fact that there are skills that we have to relearn and they change a lot. But over time, you do build up this kind of compendium of things that don't change as much. And that, I think, is where a lot of your competence actually comes from. Like, most of what I'm doing now is trading on like much bigger picture things, like solid design principles and sticking to them and stuff like that, that those actually don't change very often once you understand them and why you do those things. And I know that every field has those things that your kind of your bag of tricks has the latest stuff in it, but it also is much less important than having the like, this doesn't pass the sniff test for me because of the 5 previous ways we did this. This doesn't sound right to me. So I think that's also really important. So like not just shallow learning of the latest hyped thing, but like you do actually build a lot of confidence from the deeper learning of the stuff you always fall back on. Does that resonate with the other panelists? Like, is there something that you're like, I'm always still coming back to this one thing that kind of is true throughout?
Actually, I would say for me, some of that are mentalist techniques. And I strongly recommend that everyone learn some basic mentalism, because it will provide deeper understanding to how you work with other people and where their thought processes are. Not that you need to mentally trick people. We're not making a Las Vegas situation here, but some of the techniques behind cold reading around memory, mental calculation, misdirection, and suggestion are really important, because you can come into meetings where someone very often, and this is actually true, people make a decision within the first couple of seconds of meeting you whether or not they're going to agree with you. Sometimes they come into the meeting with their own preconceived notion that's totally wrong, and nothing that you can say can convince them otherwise. So having some of these kind of techniques to really drill down and evaluate where they're coming from more effectively, and kind of the skills to recognize which thing will allow that to come into fruition. Sometimes you just got to send that person down their own yellow brick path. We call that misdirection. Sometimes it's that dual reality where you just let that person live in their brain, because they ain't coming to your side. Sometimes it's you finding a way to be on their side, right? Finding a way through cold reading, and some of the memories, and having, some of those little touch point items that either about the company or the work they do, or something about them as a person that helps you communicate more effectively with them to understand what their goals are. Because everyone comes into a meeting with a goal. Sometimes the goal is just to not do anything, but sometimes the goal is to throw up nothing but stop signs, So if you can take that step back and take yourself out of the equation, or understand that you yourself might be the thing that they don't like, then you can find ways to get the results that are most conducive to the group. Doesn't have to be you, doesn't have to be your way, but ways to kind of work around that. So I would say that's something that I've spent some time learning, and it sounds like hoo-ha-ha, right? But these are really, if you want to create like system impact, being able to, they call it empathy. Sometimes it's not empathy. Sometimes it's compassion. Sometimes it's calculation. Lauren's laughing. She's like, ooh.
No, I mean, you asked at the beginning about like, is it soft skills we need? Is it hard skills we need? My assessment of that when I looked at my daughter and I was helping her build her first little robots at 3 was she was never going to have any trouble with the technical and the hard stuff. That is easily learned. You can go and learn it any number of ways, whatever works for you. Her challenges in the workplace were going to have to do with how you navigate the stuff Stacy is talking about. And how do you do that when there's nobody like you there to be like, no, actually, it is a little bit different here. That advice absolutely will not work for her. And like, that is just the learned experience of trying
Lauren,
to.
were you at my meeting today?
Oh,
Did you look on the other side? This meeting of technical leaders?
but yeah, I think that anyone is like, can I cut it in a technical field? Absolutely. It's not going to be about what comes out of the books. You like, everyone is capable of that and has the raw talent. Anyway, I didn't mean to like take us off in a different direction.
No, one thing I wanted to add to that is I think just kind of summarizing what both of you are talking about, it feels more like experience versus like learning syntax. And I think in the past few years, I've kind of switched over to having more experience in the field. Like when I was in my 20s, I felt very much like I was just learning everything, and I really had to understand like a specific programming language or take a manager class, which were all very helpful. But I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, okay, like even if I don't know the latest technique or the latest tool, or I don't know how this specific organization works, like I can kind of figure it out from experience. And I think the thing that I've noticed most is this quarter I'm teaching a Python class, and this is the first quarter that the students have had ChatGPT, and it's completely changed everything. Basically, like syntax doesn't matter anymore. The computer can do the syntax part for you, but it's really like, can you structure the problem on your own? Can you, like, if you're at work, can you get buy-in from everyone else? It's really about those soft skills now. So I just think it's the beginning of a very interesting discussion. I don't want to get us off track either, because that's like a whole nother discussion. But I do feel like there's a shift happening. And it started a few years ago, but it's like really happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna add on to that. Like, I think it's about knowing how to solve problems when it comes down to it. Because again, Alex mentioned when I came into my position I'm at now, I just knew Python. That's how I did my interviews. But I don't use Python at all at work. Now I use all Java, and I knew just a little bit of Java before I started. But now, I mean, it's about if you know a little bit, it'll take you a long way if you have I mean, you can learn Java, you can learn Python. It's just, do you have the ability to solve problems and kind of do just a little bit of extra work to fill in the gaps?
Well, and to your point, you are trying to solve a problem and the language is almost like, I'm going to answer in French this time, like, because that's what is needed. So ChatGPT also like takes that and really messes with the paradigm we've been having on that one. The tools versus like, don't obsess over the tools, get used to learning new tools. That's basically what we're saying.
And kind of to tie into some of that, especially with Nikki and Alice, just how the nature of data has informed how and what we need to learn. Especially with regard to how you invest in your career. I don't think a lot of people understand the power of data in their career. It's like I think every conversation I have with anybody in leadership we talk about statistics in some regard, analytics, statistics, usually money. It always ends up with being money. So how has that changed for you, and how you see and perceive like continuous education, or, you know, even within your areas of specialization? Like what does that investment that you see from other folks coming into and asking you questions look like? Sorry, it's a little more geared towards them. But
I didn't know if Alice wanted to go first, because yeah, I right now, like my main job is full stack engineering, but a lot of the day-to-day stuff, the troubleshooting stuff, is kind of data related because you have to do some troubleshooting. But like the graduate school work is heavily AI ML, and like Alice mentioned, I mean I think the whirlwind around ChatGPT and everything this year has changed so much in education. Not just so much as the field and what I'm studying, but also how we teach and how we're taught. Like I never would have imagined that we would have. It almost felt like cheating at first. At first, it was like I can't use that. I can't use that as a tool to help me because it feels like I'm cheating. But in how education is taught now, it's almost like our professors have to teach how to use those tools in a way that helps facilitate learning, instead of just be like, this is the answer to your code. You can't do that, but you can be, you have to be able to source it in the right way. Know that Bard or ChatGPT may not give you the correct answer, and you have to figure out how to get and source the answer correctly. So just not just in the way that, I guess from a just a learning perspective, an education perspective, that's kind of how it's changed things now. But from a data perspective, I mean, data is like gold. And I mean, the more you have, especially when it comes to machine learning, that's really, it's what's needed. We have a startup idea that we're struggling with now that is going to use large language models and in a relationship type of chatbot feature. But getting the data is really difficult because we're having to deal with things like privacy and ethics and patient data and things like that. So yeah, it's new and exciting, but there's some areas that are not regulated well, and not technology moves faster than policy, and a lot of those things to consider. Yep.
Yeah, for me, I wanted to share an example of using data at work. And what I found is that in classes or like startup ideas, we always talk about these like really exciting new technologies or things you can do with code. But I find that at work, a lot of times the way that we use data is pretty simple. Like just to make a quick decision, like somebody needs some quick analysis done. So for example, if we see, I don't know, like sales are going down 1 month, someone from the leadership team is going to ask, why is that happening? And fancy models or ChatGPT isn't going to help you with that. And so you have to actually think like, okay, what data can I get and then do some analysis. And then usually the data is biased in some way. Like maybe you have an idea of what you want to see going in, and then it doesn't actually turn out that way. I don't know. That's just something I've experienced a lot over the past few months. Like leadership wants certain questions answered, and then I'll do some analysis, and then people will look at it different ways. And I'm using basic tools. Like I'll use basic Python to maybe like scrape some data, and then I'll do a lot of my work in just Excel. Even though I teach in Python and SQL, I'll just do my work analysis in Excel. And yeah, it's just to answer those simple questions. So I would say like data is really powerful for feeding those complex models, but it's also really powerful for simple analysis.
That resonates a lot with me too. I spend a ton, we collect a tremendous amount of metrics to try and make data back to decisions. It is so easy to ask the wrong questions. And that's where the art is like, I don't care if you're asking ChatGPT and it's going to give you a magical answer really fast, or if you're asking your data scientist team or whatever. Knowing that you've gotten good insights and knowing that the data could be interpreted different ways is something that I'm not sure that's going to go the way of automation anytime soon, because every single time we pull data, you can spin it all sorts of ways. You can make lots of decisions in very different directions. And also, a lot of our data is just full of noise and crap, and like you can make really, really poor decisions based on it too. So to me, it's just like you're using tools again. You're using queries. You're deciding whether your query is like legit one. You're maybe doing 50 queries and looking at the data in a lot of different angles before you make a call. That's, I think, why we all kind of come back to our like SQL and our, like, there are some things that I'm still using that. Like I learned that in college, and 20 years later, I'm still using like that skill. So some of those things never go away. But you know, you can make a really bad query that looks really good and gives you really interesting data, and then you find out you really messed up that query. So.
And, you know, falling into the pits, or sometimes, you know, you kind of intrinsically know something, but the data isn't there because I'm going to throw one out for Lauren that she's going to know. So Google Play Store listings only list things by country. They do not list things by, like you can't get stats on like people from Arkansas,
Sure.
right? Like, did I see an uptick of things from people from Arkansas for some reason? Right? Like, but you can't see that in how your store
Profile
listing is performing, right? Because that's not data that you can get. All you can do is on the other side is like, oh, a bunch of people from Arkansas seem to install our thing. But you can't find any of the data that Google has. So, but there's, maybe you go, oh, well, didn't they just have a this the other night? Isn't that related to our product? Right? And you see it on here, but you can't correlate the data.
So we have those problems all the time. I think the other thing that probably everyone can resonate with is how often we have to make decisions on incomplete data, and data possibly like, you know, it was crap when you collected it, but it's at least something. And so like those things are happening all the time. And I think that's an art that you grow confidence in. Maybe like there are no-brainer things that you are basically just collecting data to, for lack of a better word, cover your ass. But you know the right thing to do. You almost don't need to justify it, but somebody wants you to, so you collect the data to go along with it. But maybe you knew that that was a problem and you didn't really need to prove it with data because your users are telling you constantly it's a problem. But sure, you can collect the data that backs that up. Those are
make
things
data
you
in
end
all
up doing.
forms.
Yeah.
What kind of data you need?
But
I got a dude. He's got scripts. We can make this happen.
yeah, being able to gain good insights out of data, I think everyone needs to do that, whether you're looking at your code and your logging output, or you're looking at your query output, or you're looking at a balance sheet. Getting good at being able to look at those things and like navigate around them is like, that's a core skill that you only get by actually like causing yourself pain in the first place that you then have to go like mine those things and work through those things. That's my biggest concern about boot camps and learning just that way, is that you never actually cause yourself the problems that you then have to dig yourself out of, where you get all the learnings, because most of your learning will come from failure. So you have to force yourself to get into situations that are safe to fail in, so that you can learn to dig yourself out in the first place.
So I kind of wanted to touch in on one example that might be a little bit of a touching moment for some of our attendees here today. But what was the first investment that you remember making in your career as far as continuous learning goes? Why did you do it? What impact did it have? And how did you decide like that investment was going to be worthwhile before you made the jump?
I'll say the first really time investment I made was after I had my kids. I was like, I really want to do more software engineering. So I went to Google. I was like, I'm going to find something out there to help me fill in those gaps, because I'm not learning enough on my own. I needed some help. I knew I needed some help. So I think I found the Udacity program. I think it was like a scholarship or something. I just Googled and I found it, and I applied, and I got that Udacity scholarship. And that was the catalyst that started it. I think it was like you get to choose whichever program you wanted to do, and I wanted to do front end. I wanted to learn more about the front end because that's what I was struggling with. So I was like, I'm going to learn that, and that led to doing the full stack program, and I did that. Then it led to the agile program, and I did that. So that was the time investment, because it really didn't cost me anything. It just cost me those evenings sometimes after work to dedicate to learning those things. Financial investment. This is gonna sound weird, but I'll say it anyway. I found a career coach, and I was in a career. I was like kind of stagnant. I did not know what I was going to do next. I had this training, and I was like, well, I think I need some help. And I found a career coach, and I had a financial investment, and I decided to sit with her for a few sessions. And like within a month, I had got like a $20,000 raise, and it was just like it didn't cost me that much money at all. It was just like one of those things you just invest in yourself for just that little bit. It had a big return, and that led to more confidence in applying for another. And she was the one to tell me, like, don't stay in that position that much longer. Apply for some more jobs. And I did that, and then I got another raise. And that's really what the catalyst was. It's just really, that was the time and financial investment that I made in myself.
I'll say that for me, there were 2 points in my life where I just felt very stuck, and then I needed to do something, and I didn't know what to do, but I needed to do something. And the second time, I also had a friend who was a career coach, and that really helped me. So I'll go into that one second. But the first time it happened was when I was in my early to mid 20s, and I was doing this job that I just didn't really enjoy. I come from a technical background, and then I was just creating a lot of PowerPoints. I like PowerPoints, but like nonstop PowerPoints can really get to someone. So then I was like, I don't have any other skill. Like, I've forgotten everything that I learned in college. I don't know how to do anything except create PowerPoints. And so then there was this like alumni networking event where they had women who were mentors. And I had a conversation with this one woman, and she's like, start learning something, just like do something. And so then I Googled, like I saw this book on analytics or something, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I just Googled like analytics certifications. And then the master's program that I went to popped up. It was the first year they were doing the program. No one knew if it was going to be a success or not, but I was like, I just got to do something different. And that's what like launched me into that data science career. And then more recently, what happened was during COVID, I had 2 young kids at home and I couldn't keep my full-time job anymore. And so I had to leave a full-time job that I really loved. And then I was at home with my kids for a few years. And then around like the end of last year, I was like, how do I get back in the game? Like, well, what should I do? And then one of my friends who happened to be a career coach, we talked through it. And then she was like, what do you really want in your career? And I just took some time and I thought about like, I want a flexible job. I want to freelance. I want to do different roles. And then just having that like really pointed me in the right direction. And then I was able to get a few gigs from that. So I would say for me personally, like those conversations with someone just to kind of like point me in the right direction really helped.
That resonates with me. So I feel like I've had 2 careers. I had my IC engineering career, and then I had my child, and which was a career for a little while. And then I have my like engineering leadership career. So there's one for each of them. I don't think it'll come as a surprise that my biggest shell out was going to college for a computer science degree, and all the debt associated with that. But I actually purposefully ended up, I was double majoring. I had a like passion major in marine biology, and I had a very strategic tactical one in computer science at the same time. 3/4 of the way in, I realized I could use my computer science degree in any field, and I could go work in marine biology in the area I wanted, and my toolkit would be extremely valuable for that. Or I could go into like big tech, possibly make more money and donate to the causes and like do other like influence what I wanted to influence in different ways. And so I basically specialized in learning the tools and being able to use them in any field. And then I went off and I actually achieved my writing apps for Monterey Bay Aquarium stuff, and I did it a different way, but I made it my way. Which tracks with when you actually make a plan and almost write down what you want in the first place, it's a lot easier to get to it than kind of swirling on I'm not sure. People thought I was crazy when I shelled out my own money for, I did an HBR manager program, like an online HBR program. Everyone else in the entire class cohort was paid for by their company, and I was in there using my own money. I was extremely motivated to get the most out of that class compared to everyone else. And I'm still using a lot of that stuff. It was surprising how much any learning opportunity you go into where you put your own skin in it is different than if you are kind of like getting a free ride there from a company or got there some other way and there's like not that powerful incentive. It's different for when you need to broaden that base. And I'm not saying that from a like, I fully believe in scholarships and stuff like that. But when every other person is coming in and like basically getting a coupon to do something and you've had to shell out a couple $1,000s, you make it work and you make the most of it. So sometimes that's valuable. I found that particular one was really good for the transition into management and like not just going in green from the IC world. And it's surprising how valuable it was.
I will also say I got my career, I got my executive coach through alumni network connections. So just if you have one, keep up with it. Whatever your network is, keep up with it. Because if you ask people, like people who actually participate, people generally want to help. Who is calling? Okay, never mind. So that's super amazing and really kind of falls into, where and when should people get started with this continuous education side of things? And what does it look like at different stages in their career? We all have some like very progressive folks at various stages and in different careers. Everybody, well, sans me, have had like a career shift. Apparently I'm just going to do mobile things until their computers are embedded in your brain. So probably not, but that, I'm like the only person. Well, technically I think I started in the embedded side. So, now I make apps and it's super easy and sell shoes online. Glorified shoe salesman. So hey, they want to pay for it. That's fine. So with regard to that, what does it look like to get started? But a lot of you cited that you felt stuck, and in making these investments in your own personal development and learning are the things that got you unstuck.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. It was just wanting a change, and it's like I was in a career I knew was like I wasn't going to learn anything else where I was. So I had to actively go out and seek some more information, some more classes, wherever that looked like. I knew that what I had wasn't enough. I could keep trying to teach myself, but I think at any point, you know yourself better than anybody else. And it was just like, for me, I know I needed that extra help. And so, yeah, going out, trying to figure out what those resources are.
I resonated with what Alice was saying earlier about knowing you're not growing in a space. So are you currently growing and you are learning stuff like crazy and you're just a sponge where you're at? No need to go invest in new stuff. Like, lean into the things you have right in front of you. If they're the things that align with what you want to be doing and the impact you want to be having, and your little plotted plan that you've either figured out on your own or you've talked with a coach or your best friend or whoever, your spouse. There are also times when I wouldn't invest. Like, I chose to go invest in fully being a present parent for a year and a half. I did not want to invest in my career at that time. I wanted to invest in not being in my career at that time because I'd been like super career focused until I was around 35. So like, I think it's reasonable to not be on all the time about your career. I think you need to kind of like build that reservoir and go, I'm really excited. This is fun to learn and interesting. And when it's feeling like that, that's good. When it feels like you're force feeding yourself stuff that doesn't resonate with you, that's a signal that either the learning structure isn't working for you or maybe it's not the right time. Don't bother learning things you're not going to be able to apply fairly soon after you have learned them. Because just like college, like did I end up using any of that stuff? Would I be able to like do that kind of math now? Do I need to? No. A lot of the answer is no.
You mean you don't need to program 8051 assembly on the regular?
Red, black trees. Like,
ironically enough, I did have to help my brother with VHDL code, but like that took me a minute.
But yeah, you want like, so anyway, it's like anything else. You want to like make sure that like you feel like you're growing and then you're going to be happy. And if you're not, that's a signal that maybe you are stuck. And sitting down, deciding what you want to do next, and then plotting a course to that. And what would you naturally do to get between A and B is usually a fairly straightforward thing. But I want to hear what Alice has to say because she got out of the spreadsheet zone.
Well, I was just going to say, learn what you said about you don't always have to be learning. Like, I love that. And I feel like that's not talked about enough because we're in this field where things just keep on moving and you feel like you need to keep on moving. But I found, this is very specific, but I have 2 kids, so I went on maternity leave 2 times. And each time I went on maternity leave, I did nothing but like, I didn't like keep track of what was going on in the tech world. I just focused on my baby. And when I came back, I don't know how my brain did this, but like certain concepts just suddenly made sense to me. It was the weirdest thing. Like concepts, like technical concepts, I really struggled with before. 3-4 months later, I come back and it all makes sense. And I'm not this is not my specialty. I'm in tech, not in medicine, but I just feel like there's something about resting too, and just like letting your body rest, or maybe like doing something else that when you come back, you see things in a different way. So I just love that idea of just not always learning if you're not ready for it. It's really, the whole thing is like listening to your body, right? It's like, if you're ready to learn, like dive into it. You can push yourself. You're going to be motivated. But if not, take a step back. And so I think it's like figuring out what to learn really isn't where you are in your career, like early in your career or later in your career. It's just where you are at that stage of life. Is it your time to rest? Is it your time to like fully dive into a really intense program? Or maybe there's just like one little problem at work that you don't understand. And so you just take a 3-hour course. And now there's so many courses like that are available. So yeah, it's like what I tell my kids all the time: listen to your body and then make a decision from there.
Learning to prioritize. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, building in space is so important no matter what, at whatever level. Like, I need to leave our meetings with dead space in them, because there are people that communicate differently, or they're chewing through a hard problem, or shower thoughts, or however you want to put it, at different scales. Every single person I know who's gone on pat leave or mat leave has some epiphany about their work and comes back with an idea where they're like, I know how I'm going to solve something that's been bothering me forever. And I didn't want to come back to this job unless I solved it, but I've solved it while I was gone, and now I'm going to go do it. So like,
oh, cool. I thought I was doing one, but that confirms that no, statistically, but yeah.
No, totally.
If you're always feeding yourself the like shallow stuff, you never have that deep thought time. And so like, I think it's really important to either force that into your schedules, or like know that you can't be learning 50 things at once. And I feel like that's the thing I'm trying to get to is you don't always have to be learning that random new little thing that's hyped. Like, just invest in yourself in different areas. So anyway, sorry, Stacy, go ahead.
No, I was just kind of going to say that with regards to something that Alice said earlier about like just kind of getting out of the like school zone. I was a B student. I graduated with B average. I am going to be a person. But hey, you know, I was very happy with that. That was above average for my major, believe it or not. We went to a school that believed that a C was an average grade. It was a problem. But I will say that I was not like good in school at that school, because I was with a bunch of people who were also like really good at school. So it had to figure out like what that balance was that kept me there and kept me learning. But it was amazing when I got out, and just over the next like year and a half, 2 years, all these things like clicked in my brain that I never like put together. I was like, oh, so that's how that works in the heap. Like just all of these things and concepts and things that were like, I'm just going to repeat what you told me, and I'm going to like maybe add some like different variable names. I did some weird things in college that I one time I would name my variables around a random theme, and like I would do like the relationship of space. I think I did one that was like Star Wars themed. There's it was very confusing for our TAs that usually were not from American cultures. So it was but whatever it takes to get you through it, you know, if you can do it, you can see yourself through it, right? I kind of just reversed that one. I made it feel better. So to kind of add these last little moments that we have, where do you think, as part of final advice and telling us what you're doing, where we can find you, what has you the most excited? final advice as to what someone needs to do in order to take that first step.
I can go first if you want. Okay. Where can you find me? LinkedIn. What am I excited about? And how to do stuff, but what's the first step? Take an assessment of where you are now and whether you're feeling like you're learning and you're in a good place or not. If you are in a good place, lean into that. If not, start plotting a course somewhere else. Where would you rather be than where you're at? The good news is, like, I was thinking about the being a mom part versus being an IC versus being a leader. I will learn in any situation I am put in. I love spending time with little people. They solve problems. It's very interesting to watch how people solve problems at all ages, at all levels of skill. When my daughter was super little, we were doing little tech projects together. She became my first product manager and my first QA tester of a tablet app. And I'm like, I did not know you could swipe that way, or the 3-fingered tap was going to be a thing, but I'm glad I knew about that because I was crashing. There are so many ways to learn from anyone around you if you're curious. And so like approach every experience in front of you with what can I take away from this? I don't try and like squeeze out crazy amounts, set lower expectations, which one of the other panelists said. If I learn one new thing in a book or at a seminar or something, or a conference, or I meet one person that helps me think about something in a different way, I'm like, I scored here. That's something I'm going to be using. So like, that's all I'm looking for in all of my experiences with others. You don't have to go seeking out the like absolute top mentor in a space. You are much more likely to learn from people who are actually your peers, or somebody who's up and coming, like in the same area where you're helping them out, and together you're like, oh, we both just jumped to the next level of understanding of something together. So I don't know, I've learned not to like try to look up to find these like mentors that are somehow ahead of me that like are also women in the space. They get fewer and harder to find the further you go. So you really have to figure that out other ways. All right, that's my answer. Good luck, it'll be fine.
I'll say for me, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, or I still have my blog, A Dash to Data. I recently did some Taylor Swift analysis if you want to check it out. So that's where you can find me. But in terms of advice, the two main things that I always think about is that I have to constantly remind myself is, first, it's impossible to know everything. And in tech, things are moving very quickly, but don't feel like you have to know everything, because you don't want to know, like, it's okay to know like everything a little bit, but if you spread yourself too thin, then that's not good for anyone, right? It's not good for you, it's not good for your company, and so on. So don't feel like you need to know everything. And then the other thing is just not to compare yourself with others. I think it's very easy to do, especially on things like LinkedIn, where every day you see like this person got a promotion, this person, I don't know, like came up with this like new startup idea, and it's really impressive. You're very happy for those people, of course, but then if you're at a stage of your life where that's not your focus, like during COVID when I was at home, it was really nice being with my kids. We took road trips. Like, it was just very nice. And then when I would open up LinkedIn, I'd be like, oh, this is everyone's accomplishments. Oh, I feel a little bad about myself. But then I'm like, you know what? Don't compare yourself. Like, I am doing this with my life, and that's great for me at this stage. And so I always say, like, compare yourself with yourself a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Are you where you want to be? Like, are you less stuck? Do you know more than you did a month ago? Like, maybe you forgot some syntax in one programming language, but you now know this other programming language. Like, that's great, and that's good for your job. So those are my 2 bits of advice. Like, you don't have to know everything, and don't compare yourself to others.
Yeah, I echo pretty much what everybody else has said already. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Let's see, new stuff that I'm working on. I have some updates to LinkedIn courses, so you can find me on there. I got about 5 of those courses out there. One is actually on career development, specifically for people with data science skills. If you started off with that, that's a good one. Let's see. Advice. I echo a lot of what you said about just being kind to yourself and allowing yourself some grace. I know it's easy to kind of get, when you're around a lot of impressive people, to feel intimidated. But one thing I've learned in engineering is that even those people that you feel intimidated around, they make mistakes too. I make mistakes. And I can tell you some stories about maybe a few production databases going down, but weren't down for long. They got back up. So I mean, people make mistakes, they come back up, everything was all good, nobody died. And so and that, to that point, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to sometimes get off track, and maybe things take a different direction than somebody else's path, and that's okay. So just because I'm in my 40s and I just got I'm still trying to get that senior dev role. Well, I'm almost there. And and you may come across somebody who's right out of college and on the same level as you, but it's okay. We all take different paths, and I wouldn't trade my path. I like that I have 3 kids. One's in the room with me right now, looking at me, waiting for me to finish this call. And and it's all good. I like the journey that I'm on, and just enjoy it, and enjoy the journey that you're on.
It's amazing. I think the 2 themes that come out of this are prioritization. And remember that you are also on the prioritization list. You also matter to you. And kind of the other theme is around forgiveness. Forgiveness of others and forgiveness of yourself. Tied to that prioritization. Are you doing what is rightest for where you are in your life? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your other obligations? Are you forgiving yourself? Are you allowing yourself the space to think, to learn, and to grow? And I think that's a really, really powerful message that we could all take from as part of self-reflection and general growth. Just so proud to get to know all of y'all. All y'all. Welcome to the South. Hey. I'm Southern now, Alice. That's what happened. I don't know. Texas is its own thing. Not saying I'm all Texas, but but I love y'all. Welcome, Dallas. How's it going? And I think thank you all so much for all of your time tonight. And it's been absolutely amazing to get to know each of you a little bit better.